Medieval monastery gardens fed Europe for 800 years, not with annual crops replanted every season, not with seed catalogs, not with anything you buy from a corporation, with 7 plants, planted once, harvested for decades. This is documented. Charlemagne recorded it in 800 AD, and then in about 50 years, the knowledge almost completely vanished. Not because the plants stopped working, because they made farmers too independent. Think about how modern vegetable gardening works. You plant, you harvest, you buy seeds again, every single year. That cycle, plant, harvest, buy, is not a natural requirement. It is a business model. 95% of vegetables sold today require annual replanting. The seed companies sell you the same plants every spring, and you come back every year because the system was designed to make you come back. Medieval farmers did not operate in that system. They planted asparagus once and fed their community for 25 years. They planted Good King Henry by their back door and harvested greens for decades without ever purchasing a replacement plant. They planted lovage once and seasoned family meals for 20 years from the same crown. The knowledge that made this possible was not lost by accident. It was buried, because perennial vegetables do not create dependency. They create freedom, and freedom is not profitable for the people selling seeds. These are the 7 crops they buried, and by the end of this video, you will know exactly how to bring every one of them back. Here is the frame that changes how you see everything in this video. Modern agriculture operates on the annual cycle: plant, harvest, buy again. That cycle is the foundation of the entire agricultural supply chain. Seed companies, fertilizer companies, pesticide manufacturers, they all depend on you returning every year. Perennial crops break that cycle permanently. You plant once, the plant establishes. It returns year after year, pulling nutrients from depths annual crops cannot reach, building soil as it grows, feeding you while requiring less from you each season rather than more. Medieval monks understood this. They designed their gardens for multi-generational production, not for this season, for the next 20 seasons. One planting, decades of harvests. That is not a romantic idea about the past. It is a documented agricultural reality that is still available to anyone willing to plant it. Everything I cover today, the complete growing guide, the sourcing, the income potential for the farmers turning these perennials into specialty crop businesses, is in the Millionaire Farmer Guide. Link in the description. We will come back to that at the end. Now let's get into the crops. Number 1. Asparagus. 25 years from one planting. The Romans cultivated asparagus as far back as 200 BC. Emperor Augustus described urgent tasks as being done faster than you can cook asparagus. When Rome fell, the knowledge of asparagus cultivation was preserved almost entirely by medieval monks who maintained it in monastery gardens across Europe. By 1469, asparagus beds were documented as standard in French monasteries. The technique spread slowly. England, 1538, Germany, 1542, carried by monastic trade networks. Here's how the system works and why it is still genius today. You plant crowns in year 1 in deep, well-prepared beds. You harvest nothing in years 1 and 2. The crowns are spending those years establishing root systems 10 feet deep, the foundation that will support 25 years of production. Year 3, you begin cutting spears, 6 to 8 weeks each spring when spears emerge 6 to 8 inches tall before the tips open. Then you stop cutting and let remaining spears grow into ferny fronds that photosynthesize and store energy underground for next year. Those same crowns continue producing, 15 years as a documented minimum, often 20, sometimes 25 years or more. A 40-foot row yields 10 to 25 pounds per season for 25 years from one planting event. That is 250 to 625 pounds of asparagus from a single afternoon of planting. For the farmers turning this into income, fresh asparagus at farmers markets commands $3 to $8 per pound during the brief spring season when everyone wants it and almost nobody has it yet. A well-established asparagus bed is passive income that arrives every spring whether you did anything or not. Industrial farming abandoned asparagus for one reason: 3 years without income is unacceptable when your business model demands quarterly returns. Medieval monks planted asparagus for their grandchildren to harvest. That patience is your competitive advantage. Number 3. Good King Henry. This plant has a name from a fairy tale and a history to match it. Medieval peasants from the 12th through 16th centuries grew it as a staple food, not a specialty, not a delicacy, a staple. Historical cookbooks describe it as a typical ingredient in medieval vegetable soups, combined with leeks and bread in vitamin-rich broths that sustained farming families through winters, famines, and plagues. Medieval families planted it by their back door, not in distant garden plots, right by the door for immediate daily cooking access. One planting meant greens from early spring through late summer, year after year, with zero replanting. Here is the genius that made it irreplaceable: 3 completely different harvests from one plant. In spring, thick young shoots emerge and cut underground like asparagus, boiled and served with butter. That's harvest 1. As the plant grows, triangular dark green leaves are picked throughout spring and summer and used exactly like spinach, boiled, sautéed, added to soups. That's harvest 2. Later in summer, flowering shoots produce small green buds that are cooked like broccoli. That's harvest 3. 3 crops, 1 plant. Plant it once and it returns every year. The nutritional profile is not comparable to modern spinach. It is superior. Higher iron, higher calcium, higher vitamin C, higher protein. Perennial roots reaching 3 to 5 feet deep, pulling minerals from depths annual crops cannot access. Why did it vanish? Potatoes arrived from the Americas. Easier to prepare, higher yields per square foot, novel and fashionable, and critically, annuals. Potatoes must be replanted every year from potato seeds that can be bought fresh. Skirret, once established, feeds you indefinitely. The seed companies made their choice. You can make a different one. Number 4. Lovage. Imagine a plant growing 6 feet tall, producing massive quantities of intensely flavored leaves every year, living 20 years or more from a single planting. That's lovage, and medieval monasteries cultivated it for one reason: versatility that nothing else could match. Every part of this plant is useful simultaneously. The leaves, tasting like celery with 10 times the intensity, were used fresh or dried to season soups, stocks, sauces, and stews. One sprig flavored an entire pot of soup for 50 monks. That's not a figure of speech. That's what the historical records document. The thick, hollow stems were harvested young and candied as sweet treats. The seeds, ripening in late summer, were ground to flavor bread and cheese. The thick, fleshy roots were boiled and eaten as winter vegetables. 4 entirely different food products from one perennial plant: leaves, stems, seeds, and roots, producing for 20 years. 13th century monastery records describe lovage tea as medicine for stomach troubles and kidney complaints, not just food, pharmacy. Medieval monks used it to treat themselves and local communities who came to monasteries for healing. Here's the economics that makes modern sense. A single mature lovage plant can season family meals for decades. To match its 20-year production from a celery purchase, you would buy celery every week for 20 years. At $2 a bunch, that's over $2,000 in celery. Or spend $8 once on a lovage root, plant it and harvest from the same plant for the next 2 decades. The Romans knew lovage. Monastery gardens preserved it through the Dark Ages. Modern kitchens have forgotten it entirely. Plant it once and remember.
Number 5. Rhubarb. Here is a real account from a real gardener that tells you everything you need to know about this plant. My folks had a rhubarb plant on the old home place that my grandmother planted. Must be 50 years old, still producing. 50 years from one planting. That is not exaggeration. That is rhubarb. Medieval Europeans valued rhubarb root primarily as expensive imported medicine. When European farmers discovered the thick stalks emerging each spring were edible, tart, fruity, complex, unlike anything else, rhubarb became a culinary staple that has never fully left. The growing pattern is almost indestructible. Plant a crown. Do not harvest year 1. Light harvest year 2. By year 3, full production, 5 to 10 pounds of edible stalks per season. Then comes the knowledge that industrial agriculture buried. When the original plant declines after 4 to 8 years, you do not pull it out and buy new plants. You divide it. You dig up the crown and split it into 3 to 5 new offset divisions, each with root attached. You replant those divisions. They reset the production clock and produce another 4 to 8 years before needing division again. Effectively infinite production from one original planting through continuous propagation. Medieval monasteries maintained artichoke patches for generations using this division method. The knowledge of when to divide, how to separate offsets without damage, how to replant for optimal regrowth was passed from older monks to younger ones as institutional knowledge spanning centuries. Modern gardeners give up after year 8 because nobody told them about division. Medieval farmers knew this was not the end of the plant, it was the beginning of the next generation. Number 7. Horseradish. The National Allotment Society warns gardeners with horseradish with 5 words. Hard to remove once in. That is not a caution, that is an endorsement. Horseradish is so perennial, so persistent, and so impossible to eliminate that medieval farmers planted it in monastery corners where nothing else would grow. Poor soil, horseradish thrives. Shade, horseradish doesn't care. Drought, it survives. Neglect, it spreads. You plant a root cutting once, just once, a 6-inch piece stuck in the ground at a 45-degree angle. Then it grows forever. Every year you harvest thick, pungent roots and grate them fresh for an intensely flavored condiment with documented antibacterial properties that medieval herbalists used both as food and medicine. Respiratory ailments, digestive aid, poultice for joint pain. One plant, multiple centuries of documented use. The challenge is not getting horseradish to produce, the challenge is containing it. Plant it in a buried container or use root barriers or it colonizes. Medieval gardeners used this aggressiveness strategically, planting it in corners, along walls, in areas where cultivated crops struggled. Horseradish filled those dead zones and produced without any care whatsoever. Why did horseradish survive when so many perennials disappeared? Because you literally cannot kill it. Industrial agriculture tried. Plow it under, it grows back. Pull it up, root fragments regenerate. Spray it, some roots survive. Horseradish is a testament to what a perennial truly is. Medieval monks planted it once, and it was still producing when the monastery walls fell. Let's look at what medieval monastery gardens actually were. They were not romantic collections of pretty plants. They were designed food systems, engineered for multi-generational production, built by people who understood that a plant established properly in year 1 should still be feeding the community in year 30. These 7 crops, asparagus, good King Henry, skirret, lovage, rhubarb, artichoke, horseradish, were not 7 random plants that happened to be perennial. They were a deliberately curated system covering every food category a community required. Spring greens, summer vegetables, autumn roots, winter medicine, flavoring, sweetness, year-round nourishment from a single planting event. Charlemagne documented this system in 800 AD. It fed Europe through the Dark Ages, through the plagues, through the famines that killed entire populations of annual crop farmers when their harvests failed. Perennial systems do not fail the same way annual systems fail. Drought hurts an annual crop catastrophically. A perennial with roots 10 feet deep survives that same drought and comes back stronger the next spring. That resilience was not an accident, it was the entire point. The knowledge was never lost, it was buried, because perennial vegetables do not create the dependency that annual seed sales require. But the plants are still here. Every one of these 7 perennial crops is available today from specialty nurseries and perennial plant suppliers. You can plant this season and begin a food system that outlasts you. For the farmers and homesteaders who want to take this further, who want to understand not just which perennial crops to plant, but how to build a complete, self-sufficient growing system that generates both food security and specialty crop income on the same land, the Millionaire Farmer Guide covers the full picture. The growing systems, the income models, the buyer networks for specialty perennial crops that are in genuine demand at premium prices right now. The compound farm model that stacks perennial food production with specialty crop income on the same land. Medieval monks built for the community that came after them. This guide helps you build for the next 20 years of your own. Link is in the description below. Drop a comment telling me which of these 7 perennial crops you are planting first. I read every single one. The knowledge was here all along. Now you